Ooey gooey sweet, dark amber color sweetness eaten as candy fudge, swirled in brownies, poured over ice cream, or used as a dip with your favorite shortbread or fruit. I'm talking about either dulce de leche or caramel. While they look similar in color and flavor and can be used in similar ways, they're actually not the same, at least in preparation. Check out my 4 ways you can make your own dulce de leche at home and, of course, use it like caramel. Caramel in its purest form is really just granulated sugar that is heated to a liquid form and caramelized to a creamy substance. Dulce de leche is Spanish for candy from milk, or also called caramelized milk or sweet milk. Dulce de leche is a common Latin American sweet treat used as a spread on cakes and sandwiched between cookies. It is made primarily of milk and sugar, not water like caramel. It is heated low and slow until the liquid evaporates, leaving milk solids and the sugar caramelizes to a dark amber or brown color. Today, we're focusing on making dulce de leche 4 different ways. The first 3 methods of dulce de leche preparation I'm sharing with you are using sweetened condensed milk in a slow cooker, over the stovetop, and in the oven. The 4th method is homemade from scratch using common pantry and fridge ingredients that are condensed and caramelized over the stove. Method number 1 is the first sweetened condensed milk version, the slow cooker or crock pot method. You need 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. Go ahead and remove the label. It's very easy to take off. Then place the entire unopened can in the middle of your slow cooker, and you're going to cover the can with water until it's at least 1 inch above the can. If you have a large slow cooker like I do, you could always put 2 or 3 cans in here at the same time and cook them so that you have multiple cans of dulce de leche ready when you're ready for them. Once you fill the crock pot pretty much as far as you can, as long as it's at least a minimum of 1 inch above the can top, go ahead and cover it up. Set your slow cooker on low for 10 hours. And I find that to be the perfect thickness and color of dulce de leche for me and what I use it for. You want to check periodically again, making sure that water doesn't evaporate, which I've never had that happen in mine, but you can pretty much go about your day now. We're at the end of the 10-hour mark, and notice that the water has been bubbling, so it's definitely been simmering, and it's been looking exactly like that for the last 3 hours and 45 minutes. Okay, the crock pot has just turned off. We'll go ahead and lift up the lid so you can see what the inside looks like. Bubbling, so the water never evaporated. It's exactly what we wanted. Now at this point, you could leave the can in the crock pot and let it come down to room temperature as is, or so it comes down to room temperature a little quicker, just use some tongs and lift it out onto a towel so that it catches all the water, and then onto a cooling rack, and we're just going to leave it there until it cools down, which will take about 1 hour to 1.5 hours. Right now it's very hot, it's been pressurized. When you can press it on the can and it gives a little bit, then it's cool enough that you can open because the pressure has decreased. Method number 2 is the second sweetened condensed milk version, the stovetop method. Basically, this method is the same as the slow cooker, but it's over the stovetop. So as before, you want to take a can of sweetened condensed milk, remove the label completely. Take an unopened can that's completely filled. There's no openings in it whatsoever. You're going to put it in a large enough pot that when you place water over it, it'll cover the top of the can. You could place a small dish rag on the bottom of the pot to keep the can from rattling as it's boiling, but that's totally up to you. But once the can is in the pot, then you're going to cover the can with water entirely. Ensure the entire can is covered. It's important to maintain the same water level throughout the entire cooking process. We do not want that water to go below the top of the can. Then you want to cover up the pan completely with a lid that fits snugly. Set the stove on and low to medium heat with enough heat that the water continues to boil. Once it bubbles, it should continue to bubble during the entire time, and you're going to leave it here just like this for 3 hours. Check the water level about every 30 minutes just to make sure that it does not go below the can top. As long as your pot is covered well and the water can't evaporate, then it should maintain the same water level. After your 3 hours are up, remove the lid. Use some tongs and lift it up and out onto a cooling rack. And I like to place my can on a towel just to soak up any water that would drip off. And allow the can to cool before opening because it has pressurized and we need that pressure to release. Regardless of where you cooked your sweetened condensed can, either in the slow cooker or over the stove, you will finish it off the same way. So if you first know that it is cooled enough, when you take the can and you can press in, and it has depressurized. So that tells us we can now open it. Open it as you would a normal can. And let's take our first look at our Dulce de Leche. Perfect. All right, so all we have to do now is just put it in a container to store it. Notice how easily it just comes out of the can. This is the easiest Dulce de Leche to make. You could stir it up, smooth it out, and be fine with it looking as is. I like to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt to balance out the really sweet flavor in it, and add a teaspoon of vanilla to give it that vanilla flavoring. And then just take a whisk and then whisk it all up. So notice it has a few chunks in it, but if you whisk it, it will smooth it out. So check this out, Dulce de Leche from a sweetened condensed milk can. Water and heat do the work. All that's left, cover it and place it in the fridge until you're ready to use it in a recipe or eat it. For troubleshooting with this method, if you find your Dulce de Leche didn't caramelize enough, then follow the next method, method number 3, which is placing the sweetened condensed milk that has been cooked as it has, emptying it in an 8 by 8 inch pan, and continue cooking using the bain-marie method. Method number 3 is the third sweetened condensed milk version, the oven method. It is the bain-marie method. Bain-marie is a French term referring to a water bath, translated directly as Mary's bath. It's often used in cooking to melt chocolate, keep food warm, or cook or bake delicate foods like custards and pudding evenly, whereby preventing any sort of hardening or crust from forming. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees. Open a can of sweetened condensed milk, and then you're just going to pour it into an 8 by 8 inch square pan. You're going to empty the entire can. Cover it tightly with some foil. Cover it so that you can still see the milk and where it is in the pan. Then you're going to set the small pan into a bigger pan. This is in a 9 by 13 inch pan. And then this is where the bain-marie comes into play. We're going to pour in enough water in the big pan that goes up to 3/4 of the way of the small pan. So you have to kind of keep track of that edge there to make sure you're 3/4 of the way. Now, to do this a little bit more easily, you can do this in the oven. You go ahead and place this in the oven and then pour the water in. I may do a little bit of both. So I'm going to start putting water in here, and then I'll just finish it in the oven. That way it won't be too heavy to put in the oven, or it won't splash. Okay, I'm going to place the pan on the oven rack. So we're going to add in the rest of 3/4 of the way up. You don't want to get any water in the smaller dish. Carefully slide the rack back and close the oven. We're going to set the timer for 1.5 hours. And then just keep an eye on the water level throughout the process. The Dulce de Leche has finished baking when it has reached the desired caramel color that you're looking for. As you notice, your water is decreasing in the pan as it's baking. It probably will start about 40 minutes in. Keep a kettle of hot water on the stove so that when you add water to the pan, you're adding hot water, boiling water preferably, so you don't cool down the water that's already in the pan when you add it. So just add more water as needed. Your little pan may move around in the big pan because of the bubbling of the water, but that's okay. The sweetened condensed milk in the oven just came out of the oven. So this will take you 1.5 hours. It may even take you up to 3 hours. It's just going to depend on how much caramelization that you want. So for me, this is about 2.5 or so. So it's definitely longer than 1.5 hours. But notice how caramelized it is. So this is what you're looking for. And then you just want to remove it from the big pan. Take a spatula and just stir it around. If you notice it's a little lumpy right now, go ahead and put it in another container where we can actually whisk it and whisk it well. Once you get it out of the container, and while it is still warm, I like to add some extra flavoring to it. I'm going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. It balances out the sweetness. And I always put salt in any sweetened thing that I make if it doesn't already have a little in it. And I want to add a teaspoon of vanilla, and then just whisk it up really, really well to get those lumps out and to get the salt and the vanilla mixed in. With a little bit of elbow grease, we were able to whisk out the lumps. Let this cool, and then we'll cover it and put it in the refrigerator until we're ready to eat it. Method number 4 is the from scratch dulce de leche, using ingredients from your fridge or pantry. For the ingredients, you'll need whole milk, granulated sugar, baking soda, salt, and vanilla. In a large, heavy-duty saucepan, one that's at least 3 to 4 quarts, that's large enough to hold 3 to 4 times as much liquid as we put in here. And we're going to add 32 ounces of whole milk, which is the same as 4 cups. To that, we're going to add 1 1/4 cups, which is 250 grams of granulated sugar. We're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Turn your stove on medium-high. We want this to come to a boil. Boiling here means a lot of froth. As the milk is heating up to come to a boil, be sure to stand nearby. You don't have to constantly whisk it, but you don't want it to burn or boil up over the pot. So for the first 10 minutes of this process, you need to be close to the milk. Okay, notice our milk is really frothy. So I'm gonna remove it from the heat for just a bit, let it come back down. This is why you need a really big saucepan. Okay, notice how quickly it started coming down. As this is happening, stay by it. Go ahead and reduce the heat to low medium. And you want this to continue to bubble, because the bubbling uncovered is what, see, notice that's bubbling up again. So stay by it, at least in the beginning. I'm gonna remove it from the heat. And that's a quick way to reduce the heat. If you have anything that's starting to bubble, like water when you're making pasta or something, just take it off the heat. It'll quickly go down. Now we're back in the safe zone. This is not gonna happen for the next 2 or 3 hours. We just gotta get this going. Now that it's heated, turn your heat down. Make sure it continues to bubble. The bubbling is what causes the liquid to evaporate, and we want this mixture to reduce down to about 1/4 of where it was when we started all this. Stay nearby for about the next 10 minutes until it kind of settles down and it gets into its like pattern. And then check it and stir it about every 10 minutes or so, just to make sure that the milk's not burning and your milk is not bubbling over the pan. And about 20 minutes in, notice how the milk has already started to caramelize a bit. It's cream instead of white now. And this is the right amount of bubbles that you want. It should be a good, nice simmer. And my heat is set on medium right now, and that's a good temperature to keep it simmering. Check that out. We are 45 minutes in post-boiling. Notice how the caramel is really turning that nice, pretty amber color brown. And it is bubbling as it should, so that it's reducing. You can see it's not as high as it was before. So we want it to reduce even more and turn even a darker color. Check out our nice dulce de leche homemade. It is ready. And this actually only took me 1 hour and 20 minutes, which is a little quicker than it's taken me in the past. It all depends on how much heat you have on it, and I had just the right amount. So we're gonna remove it from the heat. I love the vanilla flavor, so I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla. Give it another stir. You can allow your dulce de leche to cool some in the saucepan, or you can go ahead and put it in a container and let it cool there. And that's what I'm going to do, because I have a nice heat-proof glass container. I'm just gonna pour it in there. Again, notice how runny it is while it's heated. We'll allow the dulce de leche to cool in the glass container, and then once it's cooled, we will cover it and refrigerate it until we're ready to use it. Regardless of the heating method, whether it's slow cooker, over the stove top, or in the oven, if you use sweetened condensed milk, this is what it should look like. It's very, very thick. It doesn't really ooze off the spoon unless it's warm. So right now it's pretty thick. It's been in the refrigerator, but once you heat it up, it'll be runnier. But this is a consistency you can expect. If you use the homemade version over the stove, where you're just using milk and a few other ingredients, this is what that version looks like. It's a little runnier. So homemade versus sweetened condensed milk, they both can work for whatever purposes you want. Keep in mind, this one's just a little bit runnier, so sandwiched between cookies may not work quite as well like a sweetened condensed milk version. Use your dulce de leche however you see fit. For any leftover dulce de leche, use it as a spread over bread, crackers, and cookies. Use it like a frosting on cake or brownies. Heat and drizzle it over a hot apple pie, or use it as an ice cream topping. Whenever you need a caramel-like ingredient, I think dulce de leche fits the bill. And all you need is a can of sweetened condensed milk, heat, and a little time. It's great eating it with a spoon like peanut butter, no other ingredient needed to satisfy a sugar craving. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your much needed support in subscribing, liking, and sharing my videos. I truly hope you find them useful. Until next time, go bake the world.